Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Weekend Catch Up Club, the coffee morning show brought to you live every Saturday direct to Facebook and available later on demand at youtube.com/gamertide. For episode 19, we are back with Diarmuid, my good friend. How are you, buddy?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
You've had a whole week now with your PlayStation 5.
Oh,
How's it feeling?
it's been a beautiful week. It's been a beautiful week. Basically, everything that I talked about last week in terms of the games, in terms of the system, it's just more of that. It's just more.
Yeah.
I finally rolled credits on Miles. I've gone way, way deeper into Demon Souls. I've platinumed Astro's
Wow,
Playroom.
okay.
I still have other games sitting on the PlayStation 5 that I haven't had a chance to actually play yet.
All
So
right.
there's like the PS5 version of No Man's Sky. There's the PS5 version of
That's a good point.
what's it called? Warframe, which came out this Thursday.
Oh,
All
yeah.
of those games I need to
Ah,
dive back into to play, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I
yeah.
love this console so far.
I
Really, really good.
every time I hear people talking about the PlayStation 5, I'm incredibly jealous because I still haven't got my hands on one. But I will say this: like I'm loving my Xbox Series X, and it's mostly because of the quick resume is working on a bunch of games that I've a bunch of other games that I've been playing and enjoying, and just hot swapping between them is so crazy good. But also the backward compatibility stuff, like the couple of games that you mentioned there, I've yet to try No Man's Sky, which I'm excited for because it looks phenomenal, like what they've added to that game. But also I went back and played Hitman 2 from IO Interactive, and that game has like a game. It has a couple of options which are awesome for the developers put into it. So you can toggle between like your resolution or like game graphics, like bling detail mode. But then you
Hmm.
can also toggle like game detail and performance. It's not like one or the other. So you can do like high frame rate and high detail, or low detail, high frame rate, or you can really like granular control it. And because it's on the Series X, you can ramp up both at the same time. You can do like high performance and high detail, and like the loading of these huge sandboxes, just incredible. And of course it feels like it's ultra sharp. It was sharp on the One X, which was pumping out 4K, but the frame rate was a little bit stuttery. But on the Series X, it is just like incredibly buttery smooth, and
Mm.
I think it's like it's doing something even more in addition to last generation HDR. I don't know. I can't quite understand what they're doing, but for some reason, like the dashboard in certain games just seems to be like even more vibrant, even though it's still HDR. It's still the same television, but for some, I don't know what the console is doing to these games that is just wild. And I'm still loving Assassin's Creed Valhalla as well because I'm just having a lot of fun with it. It's just such
Yeah.
the world that they've created is just so fun to just like mill around and explore and see these little Viking villages and these little English hamlets, and you raid them and you uncover these silly little mysteries which we discussed last week. Really, really enjoying it. Yeah, it's a lot of fun and a lot of fun games to uh, to dive into, and we're just spoiled, man. We're just totally spoiled.
Yeah. 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 Absolutely. It's a good start to the gen. I hope they keep this momentum going forward. Basically,
Yeah, totally.
um, yeah, I'm really looking forward to next year. Some of the games coming out. Oh, it's gonna be a good year. It's gonna be a good year.
It is. So before we get into our main topic of the show, which is going to be the Game Awards, the big discussion, we'll go through the nominations of different categories. I've got the website open. We'll screen share that kind of stuff as well, and we'll pour over the five of each category. But you and I have both finished Spider-Man Miles Morales, so let's have a really like good dive into that first of all because
Yes,
it
and
is it
just
is
to lay it out there
oh
before we get in there, we're not going story spoilers, but we'll talk about like a lot of the mechanics and stuff. Yeah, and
sure.
okay, good.
Yeah, sure. We can
That's
do
fine.
we can do story spoilers maybe on a future episode where a bit more time has passed, a bit more people have maybe like had a chance to play it, and but man, that I loved it from
Yeah.
start to finish. I loved it. I have a lot still to do. I just mainlined the story. I did very little of the stuff on the periphery of the game, like the collectibles and stuff. I want to save that for when I do get the PlayStation 5 experience. But the mainline story I thought was fantastic. Yeah, we're not going to talk about specifics, but it was so well crafted and
Hmm.
so well paced. I thought it was great.
I think It was around the time when the first Spider-Man came out that the creative director of that game, Brian Intihar, was doing interviews with multiple sites and whatnot. And one of the things he mentioned about when they started writing the story for their Spider-Man game, so that was the first one.
Yeah.
They said that the best Spider-Man stories are always the ones where Spider-Man's world and Peter Parker's world kind of cross.
Sure, yeah.
And clearly, I think his name is Brian Orton. He's the guy who did this one, the Miles Morales game. Clearly, he was taking notes because that's exactly what they did with this game, where it's Spider-Man is new now.
Yeah.
He's moved to a new location, and it's Spider-Man's story and what's happening with Roxxon and the Underground and these groups that are clashing and him trying to manage that. But at the same time, interlinked is Miles's journey.
Yeah.
His reconnecting with people while at the same time trying to keep the relationships he already has kind of hidden from this world that he's just dipping his toes into. He's only been he was bit a year ago in the storyline.
Yeah.
So he hasn't had the 8 years of experience that our previous Peter had in the previous game. So this is all new to him.
Yeah.
And they do such a good job of kind of you appreciate what he has to go through to keep his secret and to keep everything compartmentalized.
Yeah.
And then the game's like the storyline just starts throwing characters at him that are going to mess that up or going to interfere in ways, and it's how he battles it. And those are the best Spider-Man stories, and this is one of the best Spider-Man stories as well because of that. It just does such a fantastic job.
Yeah, it impressed me so much with like you said, like the relationships of the people that they bring into the picture, they bring into focus, and it felt that like there's a lot of heart in the core kind of story, and I don't say that lightly because the previous game had a lot of heart as well, and those characters and those relationships were so well realized, but it just felt like they had stepped it up, and they've gone up to another level of their craft, and the way that the characters are written, the dialogue feels just so good. There's nothing like corny or trite or just didn't quite hit or quite land. It all just fused brilliantly.
Yeah, and what I really appreciated were the performances as well. I thought Najee Jeter as Miles carried the game. It was obviously you're with him all the time, so if he doesn't deliver, it's not going to be a good game, and he did. So he did a fantastic job. But all of the periphery characters did just as amazing a job.
Yeah.
And I think I only found out after I completed the game that Ashley Birch did the voice of Danica, the podcast as well. So I was like, wow, it all comes together. And I just loved, we're talking about different characters. There's characters that are way off in the periphery.
Yeah.
You still have J. Jonah Jameson doing his podcast. There was a particular episode of Danica's podcast where she got J. Jonah Jameson on, and it's just the two of them kind of butting heads.
Right.
And it is so funny. I was in the middle of doing something in the game, and I just stopped.
Yeah.
I went to a roof and just stopped just to listen to them. It was so well done. So well done.
Well, yeah, I can't agree more. There have been some complaints from people typically like to bitch and moan and complain about the game's length, but for me, I guess because I just mainlined the story, I thought, oh crap, I'm at the final bit, the moment where there's traditional in games, if you go past this point you can no longer do your side stuff.
You get that notification pop up,
that hit me by surprise because I thought, oh crap, that came really fast. But that was my own fault because I was so hooked and so beelined for the main storyline. There was maybe about 6 hours, I think, maybe 5 or 6 hours in. And I thought, oh crap, that came up fast. But after that point, it's actually quite a long point. It didn't end as quickly as I was expecting it to be when that point came up. So that whole almost epilogue ending kind of thing, that whole run up to the ending was outstandingly well crafted. And I think overall the sheer quality that is, they condensed it into like it's like the 20-hour experience condensed into like an 8-hour to 10-hour experience, and I thought it actually landed really, really, like it's just a perfect little package
Yeah.
because of that. And you can see, had this been a game that was bigger, that maybe was longer, you could see where like some of the side characters maybe would have gotten more time. Like maybe there might have been more stuff like expanded out there,
Yeah.
but yeah, it wasn't vital to that main kind of through line of the game, and
Yeah.
therefore it's just this perfectly condensed, highly polished package, which was brilliant.
Yeah. And I think one point to make is people made the comparison before the game came out that this is like the Lost Legacy for the Spider-Man franchise. And Lost Legacy is my favorite Uncharted. It is Uncharted 4, so it has the best mechanics.
Yeah.
With some of the fat cut off, and it's far more lean, and
Yeah.
it just tells its story. And it just that final set piece is what sets me off for Last of Us, or the Lost Legacy.
Lost
It's just
Legacy, yeah,
fantastic.
yeah.
But that's my favorite Uncharted. Similarly, Miles Morales is now my favorite Spider-Man game,
Yeah.
even though there's only kind of been two, well, of the Insomniac games anyway.
Yeah.
But the way they take the mechanics,
Mm-hmm.
they add in Venom powers, and they add in a bunch of other stuff as well that I won't go into. Then they tell a really concise story without kind of, fluffing it out too much.
Yeah.
But a story that's still like incredibly affecting, as you said, loads of heart. They tell you haven't done the side missions or the extra stuff, but all of that extra stuff, similar to the first game, is actually tied into the developing Miles and developing some of the other characters as well. So again, without spoilers, but in the first Spider-Man game, you go around and you collect backpacks.
Yeah.
And it's meant to kind of fill in the gaps of that 8-year period where Peter Parker started as Spider-Man up to now.
Yeah.
And it fills in those little bits of story, and you kind of realize that a lot of the encounters that you might remember from the comics or from the TV show or whatever, they happened, but in a slightly different way, just like they're telling their own story. In this one, you have a similar thing, but because Miles is only a year old in terms of being Spider-Man, he doesn't have that history yet.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
instead of learning about Spider-Man, you're actually learning about Miles.
Yeah.
So one of the things you start collecting is like time capsules that you left with your friend.
Yeah.
And those time capsules kind of fill in that storyline. And as you're going through it and you're reading the descriptions, and they're all kind of really weird and quirky things that they left in these time capsules. And it builds up that relationship to the point where when that relationship develops later on, it feels even more impactful because you have all of that. So I like that it's not just a collectathon.
Yeah.
It like everything does tie back into that main thrust of your Miles.
Yeah.
You're trying to be Spider-Man. You're also trying to be Miles at the same time.
Yeah.
And it's telling that story. And I thought it just did a fantastic job.
All of what you've just said there, I totally agree with. And for me, all of that stuff is what makes this a better game than Spider-Man 2018, but also is like much better than Lost Legacy, because Lost Legacy used like all of the same, for the most part, mechanics, and for the most part the same engine with a little bit of like kind of minor improvements to like the lighting engine and some of the tech behind it. But Miles Morales elevates everything to such a degree that it's not just taking what we had already created in 2018 and just doing a side story, a side like expansion pack. It elevates everything in a way that Lost Legacy couldn't quite achieve. And I know how brilliant Lost Legacy is. It is a fantastically well written game as well. But like every aspect of Miles Morales is just raised it up and raised everything up. The choreography of all of the set pieces, the moveset of Miles Morales with those new powers, the writing, the characterization of his backstory and family, like everything that you mentioned as well, it's just elevated everything to such a high degree that it shows that they didn't want to just put out a spin-off story with the existing tech that they already had. They wanted to create something that's like, okay, well, let's raise the bar to such a degree that we're going to just blow people away, and they absolutely did that. And I was playing on PlayStation 4 Pro, And I know it's only 30 frames per second on that console, but the game looks phenomenal on that machine. And I know I'm coming at it from a slightly different angle. Rather than this is the way to kick off the new generation, I was coming at it from this is the farewell to the previous generation that is absolutely tremendous. And like, how is this looking this good and running this good on what 4-year-old hardware the Pro is now, or 3-year-old hardware?
Yeah. 3-year-old hardware using like a CPU architecture from 7 or 8 years ago. It's like
it's crazy,
mental, absolutely mental.
So to quickly sum up, then, absolutely outstanding. Everybody needs to basically to buy this game, regardless of which generation you're on. I can't speak to base PS4, but PlayStation 4 Pro is phenomenal. And of course, PlayStation 5 is getting all of the attention right now, and it gives you those options for ray trace mode at 30 or performance mode at 60, which is still 4K, but it's obviously doesn't have like crazy reflections and stuff like that. But that smoothness, I can imagine, is just phenomenal that you wouldn't be able to walk back from at all.
Especially from like just the fighting choreography and the timing and all that. It feels so fluid. It feels just like do you remember playing Arkham Asylum and that series?
Yes.
And when you were fighting as Batman, anytime you punched, it seemed to freeze frame.
Yeah.
And because the fighting was so quick, you kind of ended up just kind of seeing Batman kind of punching one guy, and you'd press a button, and you would almost be punching the other guy.
Yeah, it was like it was snapping to it kind of thing, like very quickly. Yeah.
The combat in Spider-Man is almost faster than that, and yet you still see every single movement, and you feel the momentum of everything, and obviously the controller, you feel like the punches and all that kind of stuff. It's really well put together, and that's 60 frames. It is one of those cases where I think you mentioned last week that what you wanted to do was play through in the ray tracing mode first, and then go to the 60. And I think that's the right choice, because I don't think you'd be able to go back.
Yeah.
It's one of those situations.
I think so as well. Yeah, man, outstanding. So let's jump on to our main topic of the show, and that is, of course, the Game Awards. So I'm going to share my screen with you so you can see the nominations. If I can find, there we go. Start sharing, and we'll hop over to the next screen as well. So the Video Game Awards came out, the nominations came out for the best games of 2020. Now, I don't know about you, but 2020 feels like it's like 7 years long.
I was saying before the call started, Resident Evil 3 came out this year. That feels like a game from 2 or 3 years ago at least. It's just...
It's crazy. I was looking at... what is it? The Game Informer's list of all the games that came out this year, and going all the way back to January, like the massive expansion pack for Monster Hunter Iceborne came out this year, and Final Fantasy VII came out this year, Resident Evil came out this year, and it all feels like that was easily last year. It's crazy how time has been like completely warped this year. I mean, there's so many other games as well which are not on these lists, but came out this year and thinking, oh my god, they've just been completely forgotten about. And for the most part, it's all games that came out in like from June onwards.
Yeah,
that's all that anybody can wrap their heads around. So, Game of the Year. This is obviously the big one. Recognizing a game that delivers the absolute best experience across all creative and technical fields. Nominations are Doom Eternal, Final Fantasy VII Remake, Ghosts of Tsushima, Hades, Animal Crossing New Horizons, and The Last of Us Part 2. So that is 6 nominations. I think it's 6 in every category, actually. What do you think about that grouping, first of all, for overall Game of the Year?
It just reminds me that this year was fantastic for games. It really does. I mean, I've played 3 of the games. So I've played through Final Fantasy VII Remake, Ghost of Tsushima, and Last of Us Part 2. I haven't played Hades, but I've watched my roommate or housemate play through a lot of that and go through multiple runs.
Yeah.
And I am desperate for that to come onto a PlayStation 5. It would, I can just imagine how good that's going to be.
Yeah.
with that controller as well.
Yeah.
But anyway, enough console envy. Animal Crossing, again, it's not my type of game, but the amount of relief that gave people
Yeah.
in this year, it almost deserves to win because of that.
Yeah.
But again, I haven't played it, so I can't say. The one that felt off to me was Doom Eternal, and I can't really judge it because I haven't played it, so
Yeah.
I put my hands up there. But what felt weird to me for that one was even the people I knew who had played Doom 2016 and loved it
Yeah.
seemed to have mixed feelings about Doom Eternal. Whether it was the difficulty kind of shift, whether it was the kind of more focus on platforming,
Yeah.
it seemed a bit more muted. But at the same time, like when I look back at the reviews and I look back at the gameplay, it just looks fantastic.
Yeah.
So
that is the thing that I kind of find interesting as well, because I've played all of these games. I finished Doom Eternal, Ghost of Tsushima, Last of Us 2, and for the longest time in this year, Doom Eternal was going to be my game of the year because of how they have ramped up or injected with steroids every aspect of 2016. And I thought, this is the absolute perfect first-person shooter because it is so relentless, it is so driving, and that kind of feeling of constantly driving forward, that rush of adrenaline with the combat design. And I just thought it's peerless for how it feels and how it plays, and not just that, but the tech behind it as well, to look so good, to run so good on every single platform. And I really loved the lore that they delved into for the Doomslayer. They really embraced like his origins kind of thing, and I can see on one hand why some people maybe thought, oh, they're just like, this is so convoluted, they didn't need to do this, they could have just kept it pure like 2016, and there's totally an argument to be made for that. But for me, I just loved it. I thought, oh yes, they're just they're just really going into some crazy depth here with the origins of the Doomslayer, his kind of like species, his religion that formed him as a like a Praetorian guardian for like the elements of hell. And I absolutely loved it. And platforming didn't bother me at all. It's not even that intrusive. There is some bits where you have to jump through these like spinning fire things to different platforms, but I just found it enjoyable in terms of the platforming side, and it's a way to uncover different secrets in the map, and that's a throwback to like the original Doom games way back in 1993-4, where you could scour the map and try and work out how to get these different secret compartments in the levels. So I just loved it. I thought it was absolutely fantastic, and it's pure eye candy. And then couple that with Mick Gordon's like rampaging metal soundtrack, I think, yeah, it absolutely deserves a place. But saying that, that slot maybe took away from other games. I know Half-Life Alyx is getting a lot of like recognition to say, well, I probably would have put that in there. But again, it's so niche that maybe it didn't have the impact, or the it's not in the zeitgeist of the sheer volume of people that got to try it. But then that comes down to how they're choosing nominations. Does that matter? If it's a piece of work that the judging panel is exposed to, it shouldn't really matter if it's commercially available to millions of people as opposed to only like a few 100,000 people. It's still the work that should be judged. So it's difficult. It's a balancing act, I guess. But damn.
What would be your pick for this?
My pick for this, it's tough. I can make case. So Doom Eternal is no longer my game of the year because Ghost of Tsushima came out. Then the Last of Us 2 came out. So for a while it was going to be The Last of Us 2, and that is because I don't think I've ever experienced a game that is technically so good in terms of its performance capture, its animation, its almost sandbox-like combat design now, which was completely overhauled from the first game. It really does feel like that Metal Gear Solid 5 kind of sandbox combat design transposed into The Last of Us Part 2. But obviously the big thing was the performance all throughout the main story. I know it's been so divisive, but for me, I was gripped all the way through. I was an emotional wreck, and
Same.
and I can't think of another game, maybe in the past 10 years or so, that has left me feeling like that. I've been so emotionally wrought and so invested in the characters and all of the journeys. Even Abby, even Lev, and like everybody's character, I really loved all of them.
Yeah.
I don't understand the hate that the game has got, but I can see where people were saying, well, the second half is like too padded out, that it should. But I mean, I didn't feel that at all. I loved it. I loved exploring the flip side of the coin to get back to that penultimate moment where you do get separated in the story and then you do switch sides. I mean, it's so difficult, dude. It's so difficult. I mean, Hades, again, Hades is an incredible achievement. I'm a massive fan of Supergiant Games. I love Transistor. I love Bastion. I love Pyre. And to see that 10 years of indie development coalesce and come together to form Hades is phenomenal. But I don't think it's my game of the year. But I wouldn't question anybody that did make it their game of the year. That's the thing about really any of these games. Maybe I wouldn't class Animal Crossing as game of the year. But that's for me because I think the other games are doing something for the industry that is just way above like what Animal Crossing is doing, despite the global impact at that perfect moment in time where people needed Animal Crossing. I appreciate that as well. But the art in Hades, the music in Hades is so good as well. But I think I have to give it to Ghost of Tsushima. I think I'm leaning toward that because of the way it treated the world design, the writing of the characters, Jin Sakai, Lady Masako, the monk brother. I'm trying to remember his name as well. All of the characters.
Oh, now you're asking.
I know, I've forgotten. I think all of those characters and all of those stories had a lot, like they carried a lot of weight and they made a lot of impact to the player. And I was fully invested in every single one and every single one of their journeys and where it was going to take to. And of course, you've got foxes to pet. So I'm leaning toward Ghost of Tsushima. And then, of course, then they added the Legends mode.
Yeah.
Which was a freebie, which nobody expected. And I think it's because of the Legends mode. And then you take it into the context of a full package. You think, man, Ghost of Tsushima is probably game of the year for me.
Yeah, it's very, very high up.
Yeah.
I'm very similar to you in terms of, for me, it was, and just to spoil it, I guess, it probably still is The Last of Us Part 2. Just technically, narratively, everything comes together. As you say, it is the pinnacle of the last generation. It's like, for the last generation, my game of the generation was going to be God of War.
Yeah.
Until I played Last of Us Part 2. And it just pipped it. It just pipped it. It's just overall a far, far better package than I've seen in any other game. Just, there are moments where you forget you're playing a game and you're just watching this drama unfold and you're just riveted, and it's just fantastic.
There's so many like beautiful moments in that game, and of course horrific moments as well.
Yes.
That I just think, I mean, going back to those gameplay trailers that they were doing in the run up to the game, I kept thinking, there's no way it can ever look and be this good. No, it's just impossible. Forget it. This is like cutscenes, or that's not game engine. It can never run like this. And then the game comes out, and you're like, holy shit, it does. This is those gameplay trailers are legit. It does actually look like this and does play like this.
It's one of those cases where like that. I had catastrophically high expectations for this game, and it still managed to beat them. So it has to win Game of the Year for me. Then, however, I just wanted to point out the other two games I've played on the list. Ghost of Tsushima, I really loved. Fantastic, one of the best open world games I've played this generation.
Yeah.
And everything from just the culture that permeates through everything that you do in that game.
Yeah.
I just loved it, and the the power fantasy of being a samurai or a ronin or whatever you want to call yourself, wandering through this beautiful land is fully realized in this game.
Yeah, and the cinematography in that game as well, like the the Japanese cinema influence is so well realized.
So you have that, and for me, there was like The Last of Us, which is way up here, and this was a good solid chunk like that. And then they announced Legends, and then Legends comes out, and then I play Legends, and it just elevates it up to really, really close. It honestly is a decision for me to pick which one, because that Legends mode is so well designed, and I still haven't completed the raid. I'm only one chapter into the raid. I think we're planning on doing chapter 2 tonight at some point. And I want to get that raid knocked out, because the raid is incredibly fun. Like, in terms of raiding, the only other raid experience I've had is Destiny.
Right.
And this is as good, if not better, than Destiny in some aspects in terms of how it's designed. It's so well done. I wouldn't have believed it beforehand. But I also want to shout out the other game that we haven't really talked about, which is Final Fantasy VII Remake. Since I was, I don't know how old, I've wanted to play like Final Fantasy VII again in a kind of a, just, everything upgraded, everything kind of, and there have been multiple trailers over years kind of showing, like, I remember there was like a tech demo for a PlayStation 3, I believe, which redid the opening cinematic. And people, that sparked rumors at the time, they're remaking it, oh my god. And then you had that annoying bugger who came out at was it PSX and announced the PS4 version of Final Fantasy VII, which was just a port, and the frustration everyone felt. They finally released it, and it is better than I would have imagined.
Yeah,
it really is. They did everything right. In my opinion, the only reason it isn't higher in my list of what I would kind of chart as game of the year is some of the newer stuff that they added I didn't really appreciate, but I don't think anyone could yet.
Yeah.
Because of, like, when I say new stuff, I'm talking about story stuff.
Okay.
You kind of know if you've played the game. But that new stuff that they've added, for me, didn't or hasn't delivered yet, but that's by design, because the game isn't finished.
Yeah.
Like, they still need to do the rest of before that kind of story stuff makes sense. And maybe in retrospect, when I look back, that will be better then. But right now, I can't really judge it too much. So that's why it's kind of lower on the list. But I do want to shout out, if anyone's been waiting on the fence for like on this one, go get it. It is so well done.
Yeah.
As an action RPG, it is one of the best.
I gotta agree with that as well. Yeah, the presentation. I mean, when nobody expected it to be even possible when they started promoting it, and again when it came out, you're just like, holy crap, they did it. But then it's the question and the worry is like, okay, if this is the bar for just this little slice up to Midgard, then how long is it going to be before we get the next episodes, and how many episodes is it actually going to be? So that's really interesting. But it does get people into this franchise that maybe don't like turn-based RPGs, that prefer the fast-paced, real-time ARPG format. And within Final Fantasy VII, you can go into the control scheme and you can play it turn-based as well. Well, not really turn-based, but it's more tactical. You can freeze the time, and then you can tell it to like attack this character over here, and then they'll attack, and then you can stop time, kind of like Dragon Age did on, I think it was Origins, where or Knights of the Old Republic even, where it's you kind of like queue up your commands and then let it all play out in real time, but you're freezing time to do the tactical stuff rather than turn-based. And I really like that format as well. So I tried it both, and I gotta admit, I actually preferred that latter option of, okay, freeze time, like assess the battlefield, and then okay, I'm gonna assign a power to this guy over here. He's gonna send storm or the lightning blast over to that guy, and then I'm gonna get Cloud to then slash this guy over here, and do it more tactical rather than real time. But the flexibility to allow like any player to do that, I think, is high praise indeed for such an old game that has such a fan base that is so protective of the turn-based JRPG. Kudos all round.
Absolutely, that hybrid system
Yeah.
works. They've really designed it incredibly well.
Yeah. So Hades needs to come to like PS5 and Xbox at the moment.
Wait.
I mean, it's only on Switch at the moment, and it does play brilliantly on Switch. But I can see that the pictures maybe just a wee bit soft, and the frame rate's fine for the most part. Only when it gets super chaotic does it stutter a little bit. But it is a fantastic port, and I do love it on the Switch. But I want it blown up to 4K on the big screen and just see that artwork like massively.
I want to see those sexy gods. I want to see those sexy gods in 4K.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, that was Game of the Year. So you're voting Last of Us 2. I'm voting Ghost of Tsushima, but I wouldn't argue with anybody's kind of position on any of these. So next category, mate, is game direction. So again, Final Fantasy VII Remake, Hades, Ghost of Tsushima, Half-Life Alyx gets the nod here, and The Last of Us Part 2. This is an interesting category, to say the least, because what do we define as game direction? Is it like a movie direction, like Best Director category, where you are actually directing performances, or is it the overall game, like you're directing and guiding the project from gameplay perspectives, from narrative perspectives, not just like those cinematics.
Yeah.
You're directing your actors, kind of thing. So this is really interesting.
I think it has to be both, because that's the way. If you look at the credits of any game that's out at the moment, what you see is you have a creative director, and you might have game directors, narrative directors. You have all of that, but overall you have it's the marriage of everything.
Yeah,
it's the marriage of both. So for me, best game direction almost is the same as Game of the Year in terms of it's what is the whole package.
Yeah.
At least that's like the description. That's how it reads to me, that it's kind of the whole package. Hence why my choice is the same in this category.
Okay.
But at the same time, I always appreciate when people look at VR for game direction, because VR is one of those things where the design is so important, and how you get players to, because VR is more liberating than almost any other format in terms of, because you're able to look anywhere. So if something's happening, you need to make sure that your player is looking at it rather than avoiding it or whatever.
Yeah.
And proper design in VR is still so new. People are still working out the kinks and the language that you need to use to get players to do certain things and so on.
Yeah.
And Half-Life Alyx is the pinnacle of that so far in VR.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that it's on the list at least. But for me, again, the choice is unfortunately for all the other games, Last of Us Part 2.
The Last of Us Part 2. I think I voted Ghost of Tsushima for this one as well, actually. But it was very close between Hades, because a roguelite is not an easy game to really nail. And then to marry that with outstanding art direction, outstanding music direction, the way the narrative unfolds for that game, like the relationships between the gods and the lead character whose name I've forgotten. That's terrible, but never mind. I can see a case for that as well. But I think Ghost of Tsushima, because of my love of Japanese cinema and the way that they didn't just do a traditional open world, they wanted to add something entirely unique to that open world, and it's so meditative in many instances, that game as well, where you're creating these little poems, these couplets, and you're finding the shrines, you're just navigating through the world. It's so beautiful and so peaceful, and then it can be so ugly and terrifying as well, in a similar way to The Last of Us Part 2.
Yeah.
But it's so difficult. I can easily see a case for The Last of Us Part 2 because of how emotionally distressing that game was, and how gripped I was all the way through it, and the characters within it. Oh man, game direction.
You're tortured. You're tortured now.
I know. It's God. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna go with Last of Us Part 2. I'll go with Last of Us Part 2. Yeah, I'm okay with that. Although I could flip at any moment back to Ghost of Tsushima's, but yeah,
Yeah.
Last was Part Two for me. Yeah, because of those. I think the central performances: Ashley Johnson, Laura
Laura
Bailey,
Bailey. Yeah.
Troy Baker, his scenes as well. Really, oh god, just got me like so many times as well.
Yeah.
But the set piece encounters I thought were masterful in many ways. There's a specific point within that I'm going to save for when it comes to audio design. And because audio design is The Last of Us Part 2 for me, I think it was anyway. And I'll explain it there. But anyway, let's move on to best narrative. So again, how difficult is this? So we've actually got, this game I haven't played is 13 Sentinels, Aegis Rim, Final Fantasy VII Remake, Ghost of Tsushima, Hades, and The Last of Us Part 2. So we're obviously getting a lot of overlap between the big
And I would
four
like
here.
this is why I love awards. Not necessarily who wins and who loses. That's but the nominations.
Yeah.
Right now, I am incredibly interested in 13 Sentinels. I'm like, best narrative, and it's up against these ones, and I've played these ones, and it's like, if it's as good as these, then maybe I have to,
Worth checking out, yeah.
That's why I love these awards. It's just nice to see.
Yeah.
But I, again, like you, I can't really put too much of an opinion on this one because I just haven't played it, so I can't say.
Yeah.
For me, again, it's going to be The Last of Us because that storyline is the split narrative and how that kind of the dual protagonist kind of thing. Again, I don't want to go into spoilers about how that all resolves and all that, but like the way it does, and it, as you say, it's devastating. It's kind of uplifting as well in some aspects. That it just affects you. So that's for me. What I really wanted to shout out with this category though was Hades. Again, I haven't played it myself. I've watched my housemate play it a lot, and I love the way that the one aspect of kind of a roguelike that you don't like is the dying, because you end up kind of losing everything and all that kind of stuff. What I love about this is how they turn that into a story feature, and that's how they develop their narrative. The aspect of roguelikes that you don't like, that's what they use to progress their story. So every time you come back, if you die to one of the Furies, you come back into the
pool of blood kind of thing.
Exactly. You come back into your home, and suddenly that Fury is in the bar area, and you can talk to them, and they can just say, "Yeah, I got you that time." And you're like, "Well, maybe not next time." And I love how it develops all of the relationships and the characters using that function. It's just so well done.
Yeah.
I'm gonna keep saying it every single time it comes up. Please release a PlayStation 5 version. Please.
They absolutely flipped the script on narrative structure for Hades, and absolutely, it belongs in this category for sure. I think I'm going to vote The Last of Us Part 2 as well for everything that you said as well, of how emotionally invested I was from beginning to end, how just riveted I was about the entire experience, and it was so affecting that I didn't get that from many games this year or the last few years, and that's taking into account how phenomenal God of War's central narrative was as well, and how impactful that is between the father and son relationship, and seeing that develop for was that 2018 now? I think it was. Wow. The Last of Us Part 2's narrative was phenomenal, like from start to finish, just phenomenal. But Hades was so incredible in terms of blowing apart what a roguelike can be, and also tell a really riveting, engaging story with engaging characters. Worthy two nominations for sure. Easily either of those two could be the winners, but The Last of Us Part 2 for me as well, I think.
Agreed.
Okay, art direction. Oh, this is such a difficult one. So, Final Fantasy VII Remake, Ghost of Tsushima, Hades, Ori and the Will of the Wisps. Great to see that in there. And The Last of Us Part 2. So I'm
going to jump in
because
I'm going to surprise you by not going with The Last of Us Part 2. It's like the first time I've deviated from it, and I'm just gonna jump in there. I love the art direction in The Last of Us Part 2. I think it, as we've said multiple times already, it technically it's just beautiful, depressingly beautiful, but it's beautiful. But you know, screw Naughty Dog for the Rat King. I hate you guys for that. Anyway, for me, this it just screams Ghost of Tsushima. Every single element of Ghost of Tsushima just looks painterly.
Yeah.
You can stop the game anywhere, and it looks like it just looks fantastic. It really does. Like it's again. I don't know how else to say it. It is stunning. Character design obviously fantastic.
Yep.
The world design is stunning. There's a lot of open fields, and even those open fields with very little in it still make you feel that sort of like the very opening when you're riding the horse after the opening movie has kind of gone on and you've done that, and you begin the game and you get the title come up.
Yeah.
And you're riding through that field of kind of white flowers, and you see Jin kind of put his hand down and just run them through.
Yeah.
I was just like, I'm in love with the look of this game. I am in love. Yeah. And that's why, for me, this wins.
Yeah.
An incredibly close second for me is Hades, because sexy gods.
Sexy gods, yeah.
Sexy gods. But for me, it has to be Ghost of Tsushima. Personally, again, I can't judge Ori because I played it for about 5 minutes on the PC version when I had the PC Game Pass, but I didn't have it long enough to complete the game.
Oh, okay.
So I can't kind of judge it too much. But for me, it's between those two.
Yeah.
But what do you think?
Oh man, this is so difficult. It's the top three. What you've just said. It's between Ghost of Tsushima, Hades, and Ori and the Will of the Wisps. The color and the set piece cinematography of Ghost of Tsushima is just outstandingly good. The cherry blossoms, the petals, the colours of the different biomes, but don't really feel like biomes. It feels like this beautiful, living, breathing world. And when you do a face-off with other samurai and it goes into this proper Kurosawa cinematic mode, it's just outstandingly good. You could argue that it's not original in that way because it is using Japanese culture, Japanese cinema, but put it onto the screen. But I think that'd be a huge disservice because of how difficult that is to translate into a game interactive setting. But it is a beautiful game, phenomenal. And Hades, just look at this thumbnail here. It is absolutely outstanding, the character artwork in this game. And Supergiant have yet to release a concept art book for all of their back catalogue of games, and I wish they would get on it because I need a concept art book of their games in my collection. And it's beautiful. Like when you're playing the game and the gods come up like almost to fill the screen, and then they'll give like a few lines. The detail and the way that the characters are posing for each of the gods is outstandingly beautiful. Like it's so beautiful. So I can see a case for that as well. But I love Ori and the Will of the Wisps. I adore Blind Forest, which was the first game. But Ori and the Will of the Wisps, I went back to it now that I've got the Series X. And so on the Series X, for anybody who doesn't know, you're getting a native 6K image downsampled to 4K for your television screen, and it is so sharp and so clear, and the depth of field effects that game has for a 2D Metroidvania game, platforming action game, everything that is going on in that game, the world, the characters, whether it be like a giant toad god that you have to talk to, or it be a wolf chasing you through the environment, whether it be like fire lanterns or the bioluminescence of the plants in different areas of the world, it is stunning. So I'm going to be a little bit controversial, and I'm going to vote for Ori and the Will of the Wisps because everything about that world on just a 2D plane, they have managed to wrangle such depth and such clarity of every little piece of the environment. But Hades is wonderful. That could easily, I wouldn't question anybody for choosing that, and of course I wouldn't question anybody for Ghost of Tsushima because it is stunningly beautiful. But for me, it's Ori and the Will of the Wisps. So difficult.
Good choice.
It's so
good choice.
Existential crises trying to decide these things. Honestly, I don't know how a panel does it. So this is an interesting one as well. So, Diarmuid, we have best score and music for outstanding music, inclusive of score, original song, and or licensed soundtracks. Now, just that description for a little bit. I sometimes have a problem with this because I always think original music should garner way more weight than licensed music. Having said that, a really good curated licensed audio track in the right context of what's happening on screen can be phenomenal as well.
Yeah.
So I always think original score is way more impressive than trying to curate a bunch of, like, trying to source existing music and then putting it together into a track. Having said that, I have been watching some clips of Sackboy: A Big Adventure, and their use of licensed music.
Yeah, it's mental.
So so we've got Doom Eternal, Mick Gordon, of course, returning, Final Fantasy remake. I'm not going to read the Japanese names because I'll just make a hash of it. Hades, which is of course Darren Korb, who's done all of Supergiant's previous work. Ori and the Will of the Wisp, Gareth Coker. And the last was part 2, so it's a return of Gustavo Santaolalla, who did, of course, the first game as well. Tough category, man. This is a really tough category.
Really tough.
Yeah.
And for me, this was, after considering the options, this was for me Final Fantasy VII Remake.
Really?
Because what happened for me was, I remember before the game released, I don't know why I had this sort of bout of skepticism coming in about whether they'd be able to deliver, whether it would actually be good, because I had this very tumultuous relationship, let's say, with Nomura, who was doing this game, and he had obviously done like the Kingdom Hearts games and the Final Fantasy 15, was it, or whatever. My relationship with his storytelling and his character designs especially were very sort of, and there was a lot of skepticism creeping into my mind.
Right.
And the opening of the game, where it starts off, because if you haven't played the original Final Fantasy, it kind of immediately starts off with Aerith, and you're sort of straight there. The opening to this one, they've extended the start of it a bit, so they've pushed they've pushed further back, and then you get to Aerith, and then it continues on as you might expect. But that opening, firstly, the music starts, and you start hearing the kind of the theme, but very low, and it's very kind of in the background, and it starts pushing up as you watch these images from inside Midgar City. And you're watching all of these bits happen, and then you get to the point that you know, which is Aerith.
Okay.
And then Aerith walks out into the street, just like the classic opening, and then it pulls back, and then this full orchestra just comes in and comes up to this massive crescendo as you get to the title.
Yeah.
And that feeling of swelling and of nostalgia, but also just appreciating the music again, just that's the game. That's throughout the bloody game. It's that. It's always that. Again, I'm not going to spoil anything, but there is a theme that I did not expect to hear for reasons in this game. Yet it creeps in at the very end. There's like a motif in one of the songs. It's brief, but it's there. And it creeps in, and as soon as it happened, I was like, I just felt that kind of kick of nostalgia that I'd been feeling throughout, but it was just another one again. And it just, I think, more than any other aspect of the remake of the game improving things, what they did with the score again, the score was good in the first place, but it was all kind of MIDI, and they've done different versions of it now since. But I think the fact that they gave it the full whack with this one and properly scored it, and kind of everything just feels good when you're listening to this, because especially as a player of the original, that's kind of why I appreciated it more.
Yeah.
But like, even my housemate who hadn't played the original had just played through this. He had the soundtrack on repeat himself because he loved it. So I think for newcomers and for people who want that nostalgia kick, I think the score in Remake nailed it.
Yeah, yeah.
I just wanted to point out one other thing before I go. Hades, again, I've only watched it, but I've listened to the music being played multiple times over and over and over again. Yeah. And the sign of good music is you don't get sick of it. Yeah. And it's just so well designed. I just wanted to shout that out as well, because I do appreciate that one.
Supergiant Games always make outstanding soundtracks. Like, I don't know how they do it time after time, but they make an incredible bank of soundtracks, to the point where it has become a huge thing within the gaming community. Like, whenever they post a new game on Steam, they always make sure that the soundtrack is there and available as well, and is a huge selling point for adding it to your library. It's like, we've got a full album soundtrack ready for you as well. And the soundtrack in Hades is just as outstanding as their previous work as well. I'm not going to argue with your Final Fantasy VII Remake. I agree with that as well. It is just beautiful. Can you imagine if they do an upgraded version for PlayStation 5 that utilizes the 3D headset for that audio? That has to happen at some point. I hope it does. But I want to say a big shout out to Ori and the Will of the Wisps, because Gareth Coker has done an incredibly heartbreaking, beautiful soundtrack again. Blind Forest was a beautiful score, and he has elevated the themes of that score into Will of the Wisps just as beautiful as any of the other categories here. And of course, I've got to say, I mentioned to Mick Gordon as well. He has done an incredible metal soundtrack, and it's not the kind of thing I can listen to all that often. But when
you're in the mood
when you're in the mood for it, absolutely, it is.
Nothing hits like it.
It is outstanding, and the way it works with you're ripping the limbs off demons. It is that perfect fusion of metal and blood and guts. So, but Ori is such a gorgeous soundtrack. But there can only be one winner, and of course it's Final Fantasy VII Remake. So I'm totally in agreement there. Okay, so that was score music. So audio design. This is interesting. So we have Doom Eternal, probably for the reasons I've just mentioned there actually. Half-Life Alyx, Ghost of Tsushima, Resident Evil 3 gets a nod here, and The Last of Us Part 2.
Now, as someone who hasn't played Resident Evil 3, I can't say whether this deserves a place or not. Have you played it?
I have played it. I played it and finished it. I actually really, really enjoyed it, because it was a more like actiony game, and and it looked as good as it looked as well. I really, really enjoyed it. I understand why it didn't get as much praise as Resi 2, because of Resi 2's more of a sandbox police headquarters, whereas 3 is a bit more linear, a bit more actiony. But I still loved it, and it's still phenomenal to look at. That RE engine is outstanding.
What about the audio design? Do you think gets its nod here?
Yeah, not for me. I wouldn't have classed it really for like the best of the industry. It's good, but it's just like zombies
basically doing the sound your stomach makes
doing
when
their
you're playing
gardening.
too long.
Yeah, exactly. So it's good. It's good audio. But it's difficult, because no, I wouldn't have given it a nomination. But I don't know what I would replace it with. I'm trying to think what other games that have delivered an outstanding audio performance this year that would have taken the place of that. And my mind's gone blank as to what else came out this year. But Resident Evil, it's just a bit of a strange one. It feels a little bit out of place in this category. Because it's just...
What would have been your pick, do you think, out of these then?
So, when I mentioned earlier about The Last of Us 2's sound design, this is my category for this. I think I would give it to The Last of Us Part 2 because very specifically in the game, and it's maybe a little bit spoilery, but there's a faction of enemies in the game
Yeah.
which are very low tech, and they only communicate via whistles for positioning. And that was friggin' terrifying. Every time I heard whistles, I was terrified and I would hit the deck. And to hear, if you're listening with good audios, good headphones on, and you're playing it loud as well, so you can hear like the bristling of the grass and like environmental, like rain patterns, stuff like that. And then you hear this screeching, high-pitched whistle coming from different locations around you. You are terrified, and the way in which that they're using tactics to give away their position, but to communicate to say, are you still over there? But just via whistles was outstanding, and I don't think I've ever experienced that in a game before.
And what's really strange is you learn what the whistles mean.
Yeah.
It's weird. You actually, like, just through osmosis, just of hearing it, you know which ones are location checks. You know which ones are we think we see something.
Yeah.
You know which ones we found something.
Yeah.
You know what all of the whistles mean, and you can kind of almost judge, okay, this person has just checked in, so if I kill them now, I have plenty of time before they're going to be checked in again. So and it's like, it's mental. It really is mental. And just to shout out, because my choice is the same.
Ah, cool.
I also wanted to shout out the fact that, just like the first game, the creature design and the audio for those is just outstanding. And the aforementioned Rat King is even more terrifying because of the sound in that particular... It's just... So, again, I'm not going to go into spoilers too much, but just say the audio design in The Last of Us Part 2 wins it for me.
Yeah, I want to do a special mention to Ghost of Tsushima, because when we were recording our podcast a little while ago on this particular game, I mentioned about how I was getting Nam flashbacks to The Last of Us Part 2, and that's because within Ghost of Tsushima, whenever there's archers in or trying to take a shot at you in Ghost of Tsushima, so they'll call out to their teammates, their
so that they can duck down.
So they can duck down, but then the arrow flies, and you hear this high pitched whistle as the arrow's coming in, and that was me flashing back to The Last of Us Part 2. It's like, oh, God damn it! So like war flashbacks, and that's because that's really the main reason that The Last of Us 2 wins over Ghost of Tsushima, because the audio design in Ghost of Tsushima is beautiful as well. Like the sound of the wind, the sound of the rustling of that wind, those wind physics. The blades making contact, the music of like the flutes, the panpipes. It's a gorgeous game as well. But yeah, audio design I think is The Last of Us Part 2, just because of how they used it for strategy and a tactical setting, as well as, well, I mean, the audio in general for everything, like the weapon sounds, the movement sounds, the performance capture, like the audio of the voices and everything like that, of course, as well. But it's very specifically my decision is because of those whistles. So funny.
Fair enough.
I
Fair
know.
enough.
Right. Oh, goodness. Best performance. So we have Ashley Johnson as Ellie, Laura Bailey as Abby, both for The Last of Us Part 2. We have, I'm not even going to pronounce his name because I'll hash of it, but the actor that played Jin Sakai of Ghost of Tsushima. We have Naji Jeter as Miles Morales for Miles Morales, and Logan Cunningham as Hades. So Logan Cunningham, anybody who doesn't know, is Supergiant alumni, did the voice of the narrator of Bastion, does lots of voices for the previous games as well, and of course nailed it as Hades in the game Hades. Tough category, like really, really good selection, really tough.
What did you pick?
So I had already picked before I played Miles Morales, and that was Ashley Johnson as Ellie. I was like, without question, it was Ashley Johnson. Like all the way, I hadn't seen a performance that good, that harrowing, that emotionally like draining, and probably since Melina Jurgens of Hellblade.
Yes.
For Ninja Theory, it was on that level of performance for me. but the nuance, the naivety, the upliftingness of Miles Morales was outstanding as well, because I just finished the
Yeah.
game last night, or maybe the night before, and it was an outstanding performance for sure. But I still have to give it to Ashley Johnson for Ellie.
I'm going to be controversial here,
Okay.
and I'm going to say, for me, it's Laura Bailey,
Ooh, Abby. Yeah.
because Abby has one of the toughest kind of character arcs slash kind of audience. I don't know how to describe it. Basically, like, she starts off from an incredibly negative space in
Sure.
terms of your reaction to her, because of reasons. I'm not going to. Let's just say
Like,
there's
everybody
reasons
knows the
why.
reasons now. Yeah.
Exactly. There's particular reasons why you do not like her when it first starts out, and she plays that part really well, of being the person you don't like. And then you get to the point where you actually get to know her more,
Yeah.
and you watch her performance, and she does such a fantastic job all the way through, to the point where, and I just have to mention a line, and this is the one that kind of punches me.
Okay.
When she says, "You're my people," right?
Yeah.
She says that towards the end of the game, "You're my people," to a particular character. That was the gut punch that sold it as this performance is just out of this world.
Yeah.
For me, Laura Bailey wins it.
I'm getting goosebumps now that
Obviously,
you said
Ashley
that.
Johnson does a fantastic job as well.
Yeah.
The performances across the board in that game are fantastic. I just wanted to also shout out, because I read a lot of kind of negative reaction to his performance in the game when it came out, but I just wanted to shout out, I think it's Daisuke Tsuji, I think it is Jin. Anyway, everyone kind of bagged on him because they felt that his character was very kind of muted and restrained and very, almost flavorless, not much personality there and all that.
Yeah.
And I think that was from a lot of people who played maybe the first few hours. And I would have agreed with that up to the point where you kind of realize that's who he is at that point.
Yeah.
He is trying to be a samurai.
Yeah.
He's trying to be very, straight line. His duty is to protect the people. He doesn't think about his emotions too much. That's all kind of quite suppressed. He's trying to do his job.
Yeah.
And then as the events of the story of Ghost of Tsushima comes out, and then when you get to the end, and there's a particular thing that happens at the end, which again, I'm not going to spoil, but there's a scene between him and his uncle. I'll just say that because his uncle's in it at the start, so you know that's okay. So it's a scene between him and his uncle towards the end of the game, and it just rips your heart out when it happens.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's his uncle's performance as well, obviously, but it's his performance as well. And you realize that underneath all of that kind of stoicism that he's been showing the entire game is this kind of boiling feeling of inadequacy, as well as wanting to do the right thing, but having really difficult options to choose between.
Yeah.
And they tell that story so incredibly well, and it's his performance that sells it. So I just wanted to make sure that people knew his performance here, his nomination for performance here, is absolutely valid if you haven't played the game.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And yeah, that negativity, I think, comes from their... It's following on the heels of The Last of Us Part 2, which is another very drab game, like, tonally. And then we've got another character that is very kind of po-faced, very stoic, very drab as well. But the difference with Ghost of Tsushima is he comes out the other side of that as well. But it is what Japanese culture is largely like as well, where it isn't just like flamboyant, like throwaway, witty one-liners like Nathan Drake. He is a samurai. He has to be steadfast. He has to be restrained, and yeah, it's a very nuanced performance for sure, just to capture that in a compelling way, and then keep the gamer hooked.
Yeah.
Through to that penultimate moment that you talked about at the very end with his uncle. Yeah, great performance. Great performances in a game filled with great performances, and Sucker Punch nailed that brand new IP in a way that very few developers can get out of what they're known for into something new, and a beautiful piece of work, yeah, for sure. But yeah, and a special mention to Miles Morales, of course, as well. Najee Jeter as Miles, just a great performance, but tough category.
And just a bit of trivia there: Najee Jeter played Sam in the first Last of Us game. Just
No way, there
throwing
you
it out there.
go.
Just
Wow.
throwing it out
I
there.
see it now. I see it now that you've said that. Yeah. But yeah, I agree with your position as well on Laura Bailey as Abby, because the most having to go from the most hated character in the game to turning gamers around and seeing it from her perspective is a brilliant performance. It's a brilliant piece of design, narrative design. But yeah, the performance to really sell it and to really get you invested in Abby and her plight and her struggles, and seeing it from her perspective is yeah, I can understand that as well. But for me, it's always going to be Ellie. I thought that was just such a rage-filled place that she had to go to capture that performance for Ellie, and I think, oh my goodness, that must have been a really tough few days on set for some of the key scenes there. Outstanding work all around, really good. So, games for impact. These are ones that I don't know much about, but it is for a
Same.
thought-provoking game with a pro-social meaning or message. The only one I've actually really played here is Spiritfarer, but I've heard good things about Kentucky Route Zero. I don't know anything about If Found or Tell Me Why or Through the Darkness of Times, but I will say Spiritfarer is... I've only played maybe half hour or so from the beginning, and it strikes me as a very beautiful game. The premise of which is you are a captain of this vessel, this ship, and you are ferrying animals and creatures and beings from one destination to the other. Oh, that's kind of all I'll say about that specifically. But what it actually is doing is that you are helping them cross over into the afterlife. These creatures have passed away, and you're helping them move on. And Jesus Christ, just talking about it actually makes me feel quite emotional. And that is what a game for impact is kind of all about. It's like about mental health issues. It's about bereavement issues. It's about any kind of wider issues that I think all of these games are probably justified in their nominations. But Spiritfarer is the one that I've only tried, and I really want to get back to it because it strikes me as such a beautiful game in terms of not just its art style, like the physical beauty, but also the message that it's crafting as well. It strikes me as something quite special. But I think I might bawl my eyes out like a baby if I play much more of it. So maybe that's why I don't want to play too much more of it.
Fair enough. Again, I unfortunately can't comment too much on this category because I haven't played any of the games. I've heard quite a lot about Spiritfarer. I've heard very good things about Tell Me Why as well, and how it handles that story and those characters. So I'm looking forward to picking those up at some point. I just haven't had time yet.
Yeah.
But again, similar to what I mentioned earlier about kind of award season and getting nominations and stuff, it's immediately put these games on my radar.
Yeah.
The ones that, so Kentucky Route Zero I hadn't thought of. Now it's on my kind of list of, okay, maybe I need to look into this. Maybe I need to, So that's what I like these for. Even when I haven't played the actual games, that's what I like this kind of thing for. So
and it's great that they're all indies as well.
Yes,
like they're all like really small games. The only one that is indie, but it's maybe less indie than the indies is probably, which I didn't realize. Tell Me Why is by Don't Nod Entertainment, which have done obviously the Life is Strange games. So that's actually really interesting. I must need to check that out then, because it's by Don't Nod. But the fact that they're nominated, as you say, puts things.
Yeah, I've heard very good things about that game. I just haven't had time to kind of, pick it up and stuff. So it's something I'll definitely look into. Definitely.
Right. Best ongoing game. So, awarded to a game for outstanding development of ongoing content that evolves the player experience over time. So, it's not just games as a service, it is how they've evolved the game. For me, there is only one that really stands out, but I'll hold on to that. The nominations are Apex Legends, Destiny 2, Call of Duty Warzone, Fortnite, and No Man's Sky. I can see a case and easily for one other, but for me, it's very clearly another one. But I'm going to hold that back for now, and I'm going to get your opinions.
Again, these are all games that I have played at one point, and either fallen off of or just haven't gone back to in a while.
Yeah.
I love what they're doing with Apex Legends. I love what they're doing. That they're constantly, like, they've recently added a new map. They're constantly adding new characters. They've events happening throughout the year that just keeps people engaged. And that's ideal. It's the gameplay I'm just useless at. I get absolutely tanked every time I play it. So I'm just like,
right?
Okay, I appreciate it, but you know, you're not for me. Similarly, Destiny 2, it's coming out on next gen, I think, in about 2 weeks. I'll be jumping straight back into that just to play through it.
Yeah.
And I've heard pretty good things about the new expansion as well, so I'm looking forward to playing that. But again, it's one of those games where I just haven't played in a while, so I can't really judge too much. I loved my time with Call of Duty Warzone, but again, it was one of those things that I kind of fell off of pretty quick. Like once I just love the fact that they were able to put Call of Duty gameplay into a big battle royale.
Yeah.
I loved that they were able to do that, and it plays really well, and it's a lot of fun. And I love the little changes that they've made to the way armor works, to the way respawning works, the gulag, all of those kind of things I really like. In terms of ongoing, though, because I'm not still ongoing with it, I can't really judge. And then the other one is Fortnite, which has just been a juggernaut. And
constant, isn't it?
I kind of fell off of it when it started to turn into a game where you'd shoot somebody and they'd turn into a 3-story building. I just didn't like that. It's not my type of game. Yeah. But I love how much they've added into it. They've added in like casual modes. They've added in creator modes.
Yeah.
There's all of this. They're basically Minecrafting it, which is absolutely fine with me, and they deserve all of the success they get. For me, No Man's Sky is the winner of this. It's developed that game from a promise into an actual delivery of this is what their vision was going for this whole time.
Yeah.
And they've added so many different things that we didn't even think they were going to do. Number one, they have the new version on the PS5 and the Xbox Series X. They also have VR support. They also have all of these different things that people didn't even think about when the game originally launched. And they're just constantly adding stuff to the game, and I really appreciate it. And I think Hello Games have done a fantastic job of turning a community that was originally against them into one that I think sings their praises, and they deserve it, in my opinion.
Yeah, for me, it's absolutely No Man's Sky as well, because of that turnaround. As you said, they had already turned it around, I think 2 years ago, when the Beyond expansion, I think it was maybe called, and that was like the big turning point of.
I thought it was Origins or something like that, but maybe you're right. I don't know which one. They have names for different ones. They do.
Yeah, but
yes,
to continually build upon the feature set with these big milestone updates year after year, and I think that the new one for next gen consoles is No Man's Sky Next, I think it might be called. And it gets you super excited for what is next. Like, what is the next big one? How far are they going to be pushing this? Are they going to keep on developing it and adding to it for multiple more years, or are they going to have a finishing point? And it makes me think that it is going to just continue to exist, and they're going to have a core team that is just the No Man's Sky team, and then they're going to do other things as well. I mean, they released that little indie game just earlier this year, The Last Campfire, which was I haven't played it. It's sitting there on the PlayStation waiting to play, but it just shows you that the team isn't just all No Man's Sky. They still want to do these little creative outlet endeavors like that, but what they've done to No Man's Sky is transformative, and they keep building on that. Whether it's co-op, whether it's the base building, whether it's adding mechs to it, whether it's overhauling the the procedural generation system to make it even more fervent and rich and diverse, and all these expansions that keep on coming. For me, it is absolutely the winner. I can see Fortnite getting it just for what they do with seasons, whether it's Ghostbusters, whether it's the DC crossover, whether it's the Marvel infiltrating the world. They did like a big concert with one of the rappers, and all of this stuff that is very much the epitome of a live service model, because it is constant. It's always fresh. It's always new stuff to earn and to jump in for. So I can easily see, love it or hate it, I can easily see why Fortnite is not just in the list, but could easily get the win for this.
Yeah,
but for
agreed.
me, I think it's No Man's Sky, yeah, because of what that team has done for still such a very small team. Remember that is a very small team at Whole Games. So yeah, I can see that as well. Right. So where are we now? Oh, the indie category. Damn. Tough selection here. So we have Carrion from Phobia Game Studio. We have Fallout Guys Ultimate Knockout by Mediatonic. Hades, of course, from Supergiant Games. Spelunky 2 from Mossmouth. And Spiritfarer gets a nod by Thunder Lotus Games. I can see why Fallout Guys is in this list, but it's not the win for me. It has that cultural impact of exploding the same way that Among Us is now currently exploding, despite the fact that Among Us was I think it was like 3 years ago.
2 years ago.
2 years ago, right? Yeah. It's a game of the moment, and it's a lot of fun. It is like those old game TV shows that you used to get where it's like ultimate, like Ninja Warrior kind of thing as well. It's like that, and it is so much fun. And I've never used such profanity in a game, I think, ever before than playing online in Fall Guys. It's a lot of fun. But there's only one winner for me, and it's Hades for this. As an indie developer that have crafted a game like this, and they continue to craft these games. Like Pyre is probably the most overlooked one, but their previous games, Transistor, and like everything about their games each one takes a different gameplay style, and then they'll tackle that in a really rich and interesting way. And then for this one, they tackled a roguelike, but they wanted to not do a traditional roguelike. They did it with the backdrop of the Greek mythology, and they did it in such an interesting way, which is just outstanding for that genre. And the craft there, Hades is, it's fantastic. It's so good.
Agreed. Absolutely agreed. And I would have picked Hades if I played it myself. I just can't because I haven't. For me, Fall Guys is the winner for this purely because I haven't played the other ones. But the amount of fun I've had in Fall Guys is it's just so much fun. The skullduggery that can go on in that game. Oh my goodness. I streamed it for Extra Life, and again, the swearing there, I didn't bleep anything out. It's all on there. It's all on YouTube.
Yeah.
It's so much fun. It really is. And it's a game that I saw like a trailer for like 2 E3s ago or something like that.
Yeah.
And I just remember thinking, a battle royale game where it's not just shooting people, it's like doing tasks and kind of, how have people not thought of this before?
Yeah.
And then they released it, and it obviously became a huge success.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just perfect. It's just a fantastic little game.
It shows as well that like how rich the battle royale genre actually can transpose into genres where you didn't think possible as well.
I mean, Tetris 99.
Mario 35, where
Mario 35.
You're just playing the levels to like against other players. It's
next week we're getting
wild.
Worms Rumble. That's another one. So it's like, I love to see people taking on things like this and doing something new, and this is an example of that. That's why it wins it for me.
Yeah.
And also because I haven't played the other games, but I think it's still a worthy winner as well.
Yeah, I think so as well. Right, so let's skip forward. There's probably things that we don't need to worry about. Mobile game, community support, Best VR? Wow.
I Because my headset is busted, I can't actually give any thoughts on this one, only to say that I'm really liking the fact that Star Wars Squadrons has a VR mode, because I remember when they released that kind of tech demo
Yeah.
with Battlefront, the first one, I think, that was just like the
Yeah.
I remember thinking, please God, EA, put money behind this, make a full game out of it, and
Yeah.
they did, and it
Eventually did it.
exactly, they did, and it turned out really, really well. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm incredibly excited for that game.
Yeah, and I've played the game. I loved it. I don't have VR. I don't have flight stick support, of course, but the people that I've spoken to that do have both said it is just outstanding. It is an incredible
Exactly.
experience. If you're lucky enough to have the thrusts and the flight stick, damn. But of course, I think probably half like Alex is going to win this one because
Probably. I
because
think it
because
will,
of
yeah.
how like what they've done to take a traditional first person shooter game and completely blow it apart and get it to work for VR. I think on a technical level, it's probably just going to win, yeah. And apparently it looks fantastic as well. But again, I
Yeah.
haven't played any of these in VR, so I can't really vouch for that. This is a great one. I'll probably actually end on this one because there are a lot of categories here and we're running long. So let's end on innovation in accessibility, a great category. And it's actually, I don't know if this is a new category or not, but it's great to have it featured. And what is
think it
surprising,
is, yeah.
that we've got 2 Ubisoft titles in the mix here, which is fantastic to see. But I think it would have to be The Last of Us Part 2 because of the sheer number of granular like toggles that you've got for the accessibility options. I've never seen anything like it. You've got a mode where if the person is blind, they can still play the game.
I've seen a video of a guy who is legally blind
Yeah,
who has completed the game.
and that is
And
insane.
to have that sort of accessibility in gaming is just mind blowing.
Yeah.
It really is. And it's something that has to be encouraged. And I love the fact that accessibility options are turning from, for at least game developers, are turning from nice to haves into must haves.
Yeah,
You know, it's
Yeah.
shifting that balance. And it's just a shout out to all of the advocates who are out there who are pushing this kind of stuff. Just well done. Keep doing what you're doing, because it's shifting the industry in the right direction. And this is an example of that. The fact that I do believe this is a new award, and I think this is the kind of encouragement and sort of this is what people should be really
yeah,
shouting about. And I do love the fact that it's there.
Yeah.
Really, really
Yeah.
love it. It's fantastic.
I don't know. I don't know about yourself, Diarmuid, but I've noticed myself in some games actually taking advantage of some of the accessibility options. The most recent one is Miles Morales, where there's an option. So to shoot you to rapid fire your web shooters, you have to like press the bumper button repeatedly, and maybe it's because my hands are getting old. I've had the claw for over 30 years of playing video games. But I'm just thinking, I just can't be bothered just like hammering the bumper button so many times now. So what happens in one of the accessibility options, you press it once and it will do a burst fire to stop you from having to rapid fire it. So you press it a couple of times rather than 6 or 7 or 8 times. Or there's like autocomplete the QuickTime events. There's things that will help you to like steer the camera for like some of the chase encounters.
Yeah.
Just little things like that just improve the quality of life tenfold for an abled gamer like myself. But for anybody that does struggle to rapidly tap, you press and hold the button. You don't have to rapidly tap if it's like sore on your joints. Things like that I just want to see more of, because it just improves the overall experience for both like categories of player.
Yeah.
It's great to see.
Yeah. And just to say as well, like, I know that we're coming up to holiday season now, and I know that a lot of people around that time feel charitable, like they want to give to charities and whatever. If anyone feels like that and they want to give to something specifically gaming related, please keep Special Effect in mind, because they are a fantastic charity who
Yeah.
do brilliant work, who basically help deliver the gift that is gaming that we all love
Yeah.
to people who might not normally be able to appreciate it. And it's just really well worth supporting them if you get the chance.
Yeah, and if you want to find out more about special effect, you can actually check out, I think it was episode 5 or 6 of this very show, where I got the head of events for special effect to come on the show and talk about all the work that they do. So that's Becky Frost at Special Effect, and it was an awesome show, an awesome insight into the work, especially for being able to do what they do in a remote capacity now because of the pandemic, that they can't physically send occupational therapists out to your location anymore. So they have to do like an online assessment and advice and help and assistance in that capacity. So outstanding charity, and it's something that we love to support at Gamertagged as well. Game Blast is coming around for next year. I think it's February. I'm sure we'll be back doing some more charity fundraising stuff for that as well. But yeah, couldn't agree more, Diarmuid. They're a great charity. So we'll wrap it up there. There's about another 10 or 20 categories, like best action game, best sim, best fighting game, best racing game. We won't bother with those. We've covered all of our kind of main ones that we really wanted to talk about this morning. And it's been an awesome show, buddy. Thank you for joining me again.
No problem. Thank you very much for having me.
You are most welcome. So everybody, if you have enjoyed this show, then do remember to give it a like. If you're watching later on demand, then maybe subscribe to the channel as well and hit the like button. It helps with the old algorithm to get searchability and all that kind of good stuff. But for now, take care. Have a great rest of your weekend, and I will catch you on the next show. Bye bye.